All right, you guys, so today we're gonna go over the Kettlebell Sumo Deadlift. I love this exercise, and I find that it's the most comfortable way to set up for a deadlift, especially if you are a beginner. And I find that the wide stance kind of helps protect people's backs a little bit more. Me having scoliosis, that's something that I'm very interested in, so the wide stance is really nice. So a couple of things before we get started. If you're doing a kettlebell deadlift, I want you, or any deadlift for that matter, I want you to think about using your upper body just as much as you're using your lower body. So a huge part of a deadlift is actually engaging your lats, so those big muscles in your back. So when you're holding your weight, you want to make sure that you're pulling your shoulders back and engaging right in between your shoulder blades through the entire exercise. So I'll show you with the weight in just a second, but basically you want to make sure that your back is nice and strong so that when you're doing your deadlift, you can only extend back so far and get the weight so low if your back is engaged and you're pulling your shoulder blades together. If you let go of your back and let go of your upper body, you're able to kind of sink down a lot further. And this is a position that you don't want to end up in, because then you end up rounding the spine, the weight's pulling down on the spine, and then typically from this position, most people will start to come up from their spine, and then that's when most people get injured. So really pay attention to squeezing the back, okay? All right, so you're gonna have your kettlebell. You're gonna get into a stance that is wider than hips, kind of a lot wider than hips. So pretty wide stance here. Point the feet towards the corners of the room. And then from here, pull the shoulder blades together. And then you're gonna think about bending your knees as you extend your hips back. So we kind of bend the knees, push the hips back, 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 back. And we're pulling the shoulder blades together. So if you don't tap the ground, that's totally fine. And then from here, you're going to think about bringing the hips forward, tucking under and squeezing the glutes at the top. When you're taking the kettlebell down, I also want you to imagine that you're placing it right in between your feet, okay? So a lot of times what I see is people don't extend their hips back far enough, and what they end up doing is they kind of end up in a position like this. So the hips don't go back and the weight's kind of ending up closer to the toes, which is gonna end up putting a lot of weight on your lower back, okay? So imagine that you're going right towards the middle of your feet, pull the shoulders back, push the hips back as far as they'll go with a little knee bend, come down, bring the hips forward, tuck under and squeeze. Okay, and when you're bringing the weight up and tucking under, you're really making sure that that posterior tilt is happening at the top to get that glute squeeze, and that you're not just swaying through the lower back, all right? So that's the Kettlebell Sumo Deadlift. Let me know if you guys have any questions.